Good Monday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock, and time for Sports for CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you had a great weekend. Browns training camp underway. Not in pads yet. Those won't come until Friday, Saturday of this week, but they are going through workouts. West Virginia at the Greenbrier. Deshaun Watson stepping up in the pocket. He finds Donovan Peoples-Jones. Again, no pads, a little bit of a half-speed workout. David Bell wide open, gets it from Watson this time. Watson over the middle, and that is Elijah Moore with it. And you get an idea, they're going to try to get the ball in number 8, Elijah Moore's hands. Defense getting after it. Tomlinson, a little bit of speed, and that is a big defensive tackle who can move a little bit. Zadarius Smith, a little bit of a pass rush drill, and here Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah working in some pass coverage. Some news and notes. Amari Cooper tweaked something. They won't say what. They did say it is not a core muscle tweak that he had the surgery on. But he was off to the side working, conditioning, not expected to be serious at all. First 11 on 11 reps of camp. Jordan Elliott and the aforementioned Dalvin Tomlinson working at defensive tackle, and Greg Newsome working out in the slot. That from Browns beat reporter Scott Petrak. You can catch him at brownzone.com as well. With that, let's welcome in Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. And Tim, again, good to see them back on the field, getting ready. We'll have plenty of Browns coverage, but they're getting after it. That's a good thing.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously because they have the Hall of Fame game, they're one of the first teams that's going to be, out there working, through camp stuff. And I guess it makes sense. It makes sense from that regard that, Kevin Stefanski and the team's kind of ramping this up slowly, and it makes a lot of sense. So, today we finally got to see some first 11 on 11s. That's good to see. And it seems like a good slow build up towards getting them ready for, that first preseason game. Like I said, the Hall of Fame game where, based on what Kevin Stefanski was talking about Saturday, is going to be a chance for a lot of young players lower in the depth chart to really show what they're capable of. So it's fun to see, action starting to pick up a little bit. And, it's also nice to kind of have some scenery to work with as well. You got the mountains off in the distance and all those videos and photos, down there at the Greenbrier. It's kind of fun to see.
So Browns owners Jimmy and Dee Haslam met with the media a few minutes ago, about 15, 20 minutes ago, talking about expectations for this year, the roster, and also a sense of urgency.
It's really dangerous to say now or never. NFL is unbelievably competitive. In our division, just Cincinnati, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, us, most people think it's the toughest division. So we feel the best about our roster as we have going into this year. I think Andrew and Paul and Kevin have done a great job. We're excited about this year, yes. To say it's now or never, I think it'd be grossly unfair. But we're excited about the year.
So, Tim, high expectations, but not gonna put undue pressure on the head coach or the general manager.
Yeah, I mean, you can tell, obviously, with the AFC being as strong as it is, there's going to be some good teams that miss the playoffs this year, and that's even with 7 spots now in the AFC, to get into the playoffs. In this division, you could really see any of these 4 teams getting out, making the playoffs. Especially Cincinnati and Baltimore have a chance to make a deep playoff run. The Bengals seem like the top contender to keep the Chiefs from going back to the Super Bowl as they did, back in the 2021 season. So this is as deep as you can imagine. So the pressure's got to be on the Browns, no question about it. They've missed the playoffs back-to-back seasons. They've underachieved the last 2 years. 2021 was because Baker Mayfield had the torn labrum on the left shoulder. Last year is because Deshaun Watson was out for the first 11 games, and the issues with defense and special teams. There's no excuses this year, barring significant injury to key players. That's really the biggest thing I think that is out of their control, is can they keep those players healthy, and can Deshaun Watson return to form? If those things happen, no reason the Browns can't make the playoffs and be kind of, a team that, really catches people's attention as the season goes on. I mean, we kind of agree, and as we've been talking about before, it seems like they're getting slept on a little bit. They go out and perform, that's all that matters, is going out there winning games and trying to get yourself in a position where you're making a deep playoff run into January.
Well, the Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Barry Berry know what's expected. This is a playoff team. They understand that. All the talk has been how important the play of Deshaun Watson will be to the Browns' success. Watson and general manager Andrew Berry talked about the dynamic between Deshaun and Kevin Stefanski trying to revamp and rebuild this offense around their franchise quarterback.
Me and Kevin has just been, our relationship is going to continue to grow. And as the days go by, we continue to talk and communicate. He knows he can come to me with whatever situation, if it's about football, if it's about life, if it's about the locker room, anything. He can come to me and I'll make sure I take care of it. And vice versa, I can do the same with him. So, we've been able to talk over the past offseason. Sometimes we'll talk about football, sometimes we'll talk about family, vacation, all types of things. So being able to have that relationship and that open road for both of us to communicate is definitely a bonus for us.
From the general manager seat, it's been pretty cool to just see their relationship continue to just come together. It's very natural and organic, Jake. And I think Kevin, with Kevin's creativity and Deshaun's talent and work ethic, the things that I think we'll be able to do offensively that maybe we haven't been able to do before. Candidly, I'm pretty excited to see. So I know both of them really from the spring have been in the lab, so to speak, and we're all going to get a chance to see how it comes together here at starting with training camp, and then as we kind of figure out our identity going into the season.
And Tim, those I had said a couple weeks ago, that's one of the things that I wanted to hear was that the quarterback and the head coach were on the same page. They understood it. They wanted to work with each other. They're tied at the hip. And all good NFL franchises, quarterback and head coach, have that kind of relationship that they're describing.
100%. I mean, you go down the list of the great ones, Bill Walsh and Joe Montana, Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, and what we're seeing right now with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. Great relationships between head coach and quarterback are the ones you really need to put yourself in the best position to go to the Super Bowl. When your head coach and the most important player of your football team are in sync, they know exactly what's going on. That sets the tone right there. And we've seen throughout this offseason, Deshaun Watson has talked about how Kevin Stefanski's kind of altered the offensive system to better suit Deshaun Watson's talents. They didn't really get a chance to do that last year. Because we knew Watson was getting suspended, we eventually learned it was going to be for 11 games. And then he had to come at the final 6 and play an offense that maybe wasn't quite as acclimated to his own individual strengths. This year, it's all about creating an offense for Deshaun Watson, putting him in the best position to be successful. And we know Kevin Stefanski's is pretty creative as a head coach. I think we talked about before, more creative, I think, than people realize. But I think now that you have a quarterback of Deshaun Watson's talent and what he's shown throughout his career, particularly in his time in Houston, that he has the talent to, take a good offense and elevate it to another level. You put him with a guy like Kevin Stefanski, who's shown that he can be very creative. There's a lot of good things going there, and just comes down to how well it shows on the field. But the potential to be a really good offense is all right there for them.
Yep, and he has to be willing, being Kevin Stefanski, to tweak things for Deshaun Watson, and that's exactly what it sounds like is going on. So news around the NFL is about star running backs holding out and not being valued as high as other positions, kind of being devalued, if you will. Saquon Barkley holding out. Josh Jacobs not happy with his deal. Andrew Berry addressed the topic of that, the value of running backs, as well as his thoughts about the Browns running back, Nick Chubb.
I think now, unequivocally, the central protagonist in our sport is the quarterback. And as a result, positions that are the quarterback plus positions that are tied to the passing game, the market has dictated that those values have shifted because of their impact on winning. And I think you see that over time as the game changes, the game evolves. Now that being said, the rarest thing that you can find is a difference maker, regardless of position, regardless of your organizational philosophy. And now we have a defensive tackle that's making north of $30 million. We have a guard that's making north of $20 million. You have off-the-ball linebackers that are making $20 million, because there are players that break the mold. And for us, when we made our decision at running back, we felt like we had a superstar at the position who embodied everything that we wanted within the organization. So we didn't overthink it. It's it's Nick Chubb, right? And so, for us, it was a pretty straightforward decision because those difference makers are hard to find.
And again, that's why you don't read too much into how much other people are paying their running backs. It sure sounds like Andrew Berry wants to find a way to make sure Nick Chubb is in a Cleveland Browns uniform for quite a while.
Absolutely. I mean, you could argue he's as good a running back in the NFL as any, maybe a tier higher than some of the guys that we just talked about. Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs are very good running backs, no question about it. I'm not trying to disparage either of them in either way. They're both quality running backs, but with Nick Chubb making about $12 million a year, I don't know if those running backs are going to be able to make much more than that in long-term deals. But I think what Andrew Berry said was very poignant, talking about difference makers and those high impact players, and it doesn't matter the position. I mean, obviously referencing just how you can have stars at non-premium positions that still make impacts. Nick Chubb is not at a premium position, and he still has a very high impact in a lot of games. He's one of the first things people talk about when they talk about the Browns and how you go up against them. So I obviously, we know Andrew Berry comes from an analytically inclined philosophy, but it's kind of seemed like, the best thing you do for your roster, analytics or not, is find difference makers. And if you have difference makers, guys who can just make plays at any given time, basically regardless of the position, you do what you can to keep them for as long as you can. I don't know how long Nick Chubb has left, as far as that kind of player for the Browns, but it's worth keeping around because the odds of finding another guy who can be as good as Nick Chubb is extremely slim. So if you got one of those guys, it makes sense, like Andrew Berry said, to hang on to him as long as they still produce at a high level.
Tim Bielik and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE. I'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, Dave. Howard from Marin County. Just thinking about the upcoming year. And basically, I think that the Browns will finish last in their division. They have so many problems. Among them are, they have tackles that they're not doing too well. The tackles have been good. Then they have the linebacking core isn't good. Then you have the receiving core. Marquise Goodwin, he won't be playing this year. So I personally believe that it's not going to be a good year. Sorry, I have to be a killjoy. Thanks a lot. Enjoy the show. Bye.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Tim, I think the talent is there defensively. Now, the defensive tackle spot might be thin. Don't underestimate the importance of a coordinator like Jim Schwartz. That would be my only rebuttal to that. I think Jim Schwartz will make this defense better. Thin at wide receiver, maybe. Guys are going to have to step up if Marquise Goodwin in there, and I'm talking about David Bell and Cedric Tillman.
Yeah, I mean, I understand, the pessimism there. I mean, the Browns have, kind of just underachieved for the better part of, the last 23 plus years since they come back into the NFL, with the exception of maybe a couple of seasons. So I kind of understand the pessimism, but, it's also not like the rest of the teams in the AFC North don't have question marks. I know the Bengals are favored, but they have a lot of questions in that secondary. How are you going to replace Jesse Bates and Von Bell in the back end of that defense with Baltimore? Can Lamar Jackson play extremely well in a pass-heavy offense that Todd Monken is bringing in? And I still have questions about that defense. And as I've said before, I've been, a little not quite as impressed with the drafting and some of the draft picks that Eric DeCosta's made. He hasn't quite been what, Baltimore, I'm sure, hoped he would be when he succeeded Ozzie Newsome with Pittsburgh. What kind of ceiling does Kenny Pickett have? Does he have, can he be a franchise quarterback? Can he be a guy who competes with Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Deshaun Watson is for the elite status in the NFL, among other things? Or is he, a guy who's maybe on a Baker Mayfield level or somewhere around Kirk Cousins? That's going to be the ultimate question. So it's not like the Browns don't have questions. I mean, we know they definitely have questions. The caller just kind of touched on those questions, but to think that they're the only team in the division that has those concerns, I mean, I think we got to expand the sphere a little bit and really see it. Every team is flawed. There's no such thing as a perfect team. So are there issues? Yeah, but the great teams are the ones that overcome those issues because they have impact players. And like you said, Deshaun Watson is that impact player. It makes up for a lot of questions.
So this is from the Bleacher Report. Every team's biggest reason for optimism heading into training camp. And for the Browns, Jim Schwartz, new look defense. Browns struggled to stop the run, consistently pressure the quarterback as well last year. They also experienced too many breakdowns on the back end. New defensive tackle rotation should help with the former issue, while Schwartz, a seasoned Super Bowl winning coordinator, should help with the latter. And guys that watch the show frequently know Schwartz was a guy I wanted before they hired him, and he's been pretty much what I thought he would be.
I mean, he's a high-end defensive coordinator. He's one of the best to have done the job, in the last couple decades. I mean, there's a reason he was a head coach for a handful of years. He knows how to create pressure with scheme, and he understands, how to get the most out of a defense. Some of the guys we're talking about, maybe it's more simplified defense that involves more reading and reacting versus thinking, which I think was a big issue the last couple of years with Joe Wood's defenses. Guys were thinking instead of just reacting, and when you're thinking instead of reacting, naturally you're going to look slower. So it may not necessarily be a see ball, get ball type of thing that goes on with the Jim Schwartz defense, but he understands that the guy you want to affect the most on the other team is the quarterback. If you can affect him with pressure, if you can make him uncomfortable, with all sorts of different guys getting after him, that's where you can create some problems. That's where you can get some turnovers and, get your offense back on the field, potentially in short field, score a quick touchdown and flip momentum around. He understands those sorts of things. And the additions that Andrew Berry's made this offseason, particularly on the defensive front, getting Dalvin Tomlinson, Obo Okoronkwo in free agency, trading for Zadarius Smith. Those are the things that you need to do if you're the Browns to supply Jim Schwartz with the pieces he thinks he needs to take this defense to the level that I think we all think it should have been, the previous 2 seasons. It's just a matter of, like I say, just going out there and proving it.
So last week we went through the exercise of saying what we wanted to see and hear from training camp. I said that Kevin Stefanski and Deshaun Watson were on the same page. Other thing I wanted to hear was the defense, talking about the new defensive system. Take a listen to what Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah said about playing for Jim Schwartz.
A bit more free. I'm breathing now, right? We have a scheme that really allows us to be who we are, right? Coaching staff that's very solid. We put the pieces in place. Looking for a very, very strong year. So just free. I could breathe. Our brothers can breathe. We could kind of go out there and really go out there and attack and do what we do. So I think that's going to be huge. You'll see it in the mindset. You'll see it in the way that we play. It's going to be very no nonsense, no patty cake, and you'll see that. So any player that has a certain skill set yearns for a coach like Coach Schwartz to be able to tap into his full potential, to put him in the right places, to send him when it's time to send, to pull him back when it's time to pull him back. And Coach Schwartz really understands not only my skill set, but also the other players and the personnel, not only of our team, but also of the other teams, and when to put us different places at certain times. So it's good.
And again, those are the kind of things that you want to hear from your defense.
It's the one thing we've been talking about for the past couple of years is the personnel that Andrew Berry's put together, particularly in the draft. He's drafted a lot of attack-minded defensive players, in particular Grant Delpin and, the guy we just saw, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, talking about it. And Jim Schwartz is clearly an attack-minded defensive coordinator. So it makes sense that, the two that Schwartz and JOK seem like a good fit for each other. JOK is, like we talked about, as a player that, you can put around the line of scrimmage, and have him attack, and that's where he makes a lot of plays. That's where it seemed like he made most of his plays, throughout the first 2 seasons of his career, is going downhill and attacking the line of scrimmage and being aggressive. And I think when you have a defensive coordinator who coaches that aggressive style, coaches an attack-minded style, those are coordinators that are fun to play for. And we talked about it before that I thought, last year the Browns were a little too passive defensively, especially considering the talent they had, at those impact positions. Now that you have a guy who's embracing that, it should create a more aggressive defense. Hopefully more disciplined, because we saw a lot of coverage issues, penalty issues a year ago. If they can harness that attack-minded energy with a little more discipline, this defense has a chance to be as good as a lot of people think they are.
Yep, and it'll be interesting to see as that goes along. So one of the questions about the defense is the depth at defensive tackle, and made even thinner with the release of Perrion Winfrey late last week because of the off-the-field issues. Andrew Berry talked about why they haven't added a veteran defensive tackle as of yet.
One of the big things that we do early in training camp is really just assess the roster. We haven't seen a lot of our players in pads in a new defensive system. We do like a number of the individuals that we have in that room currently. Obviously, it's unfortunate we're moving on from Perrion after a year, but he, like a number of players on our roster, were really competing for a role, competing for a roster spot. So we like the mix of players that we have. Across all positions. We'll see how we feel as we come to the middle of camp, and then reassess the roster from there.
And again, there's no, as we've been saying the last couple of weeks, Tim, there isn't a hurry to bring one of these older veteran defensive tackles in because come 10 days before the start of the season, there will be over 900 people will be cut the same day. And some of those are going to be guys that can play in the league for, 5, 6, 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, when that cutdown day happens, there's going to be just so much chaos going on, like you said. But I think you can understand, why Andrew Berry's, talking about how they want to be careful. They want to take their time and see what they have, because these are a lot of pieces, that they've thrown into this defensive tackle room. I mean, you look at the depth chart right now with Perrion Winfrey gone, 2/3 of that defensive tackle room is new guys. I mean, signing Dalvin Tomlinson, Maurice Hurst, Tristan Hill, and then drafting Siaki Ika in the 3rd round. Like I said, that's 4 of your 6 defensive tackles are new guys. So you want to see how those guys come together and develop chemistry with the defensive ends. And not to mention, you have Jordan Elliott and Tommy Togiai. I can understand, wanting to see what those guys look like in this new defensive system, because those guys have only ever played for Joe Woods. So you would want to see what they look like in Jim Schwartz's defense, if they can be fits. And if not, then, like you said, there's guys that could be cut, toward at the end of training camp, at the end of the preseason. Also guys out there for agency, maybe like a Shelby Harris or Matt Ioannidis are still out there. There's plenty of veterans that just seem like they don't want to go through training camp. So there's certainly going to be guys available out there. An injury could open things up. So, I mean, it makes sense, go through a couple weeks of practice, see what you have, see if you have a standout guy that is clearly not just, better than all the rest, but worthy of starting next to Dalvin Tomlinson. If you don't have that for your Andrew Berry, I think it's worth going out and trying to get another veteran who you can just plug right in.
Tim Bielik and I are going to take another time out. Other side of the break, we'll hear more from Deshaun Watson and Andrew Berry. Sports for CLE, we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Tony Rizzo, ESPN Cleveland, talked about who he thinks the best player on offense and defense will be for the Browns this year.
As far as Watson goes, I don't think as fans, as Browns Nation, I don't think you've seen a quarterback play well. I think we've all forgotten what happens when your best player is your quarterback. When have we seen it? Since 1999. We have not. I think you are going to see it this year. I think Garrett and I think Deshaun are the best players on this team. And if your quarterback's the best player on your team, Aaron, what happens?
You're usually a Super Bowl contender.
And Tim, just think of the jersey that was going around with all the names that have played quarterback since 1999. I can't argue with it. The quarterback has not been the best player on this team, and We heard earlier in the show how quarterback-driven this league is by Andrew Berry, the general manager, which tells you why they gave up what they gave up to go and get Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, I mean, he's not just talking about since 1999. I think you have to go back to the late 80s, the Bernie Kosar days. I mean, I wasn't even 1 year old the last time, they had an elite quarterback, playing at that high level and, having his team as a Super Bowl contender. Obviously, Bernie taking the Browns to their third AFC championship game in 4 years in that season. Actually, I was one and change, but that's beside the point. I mean, I'm 34 years old right now, and I can't imagine. There's a whole generation of Browns fans that just haven't seen that sort of thing. They haven't seen this team play with a quarterback of Deshaun Watson's caliber. Obviously, the last 6 games of the season, disappointing that, that there wasn't really that consistent stretch of excellent play. There were flashes, but there was a lot of inconsistency. So the hope is, there's a lot of potential there. The hope has got to be that, Deshaun Watson, becomes more consistent at that high level and plays like the quarterback everybody thought the Browns were getting the second they traded all those draft picks for him and gave him all that guaranteed money. So that's where I think it is. And if he plays at that level, this is like Tony was talking about, this is a team that has a chance to maybe make some noise in the Super Bowl race in the AFC.
Well, Deshaun Watson talked about the pressure of being the most important player for the Browns to have a successful season this year.
Trying to bring down the pressure. But to your question, it's more of just kind of like, it's going to go as far as the quarterback take us, because we touch the ball every play. We're the leader, and we direct where the ball goes and if it gets in the end zone. And I think, with this opportunity for myself, I want to be able to embrace that pressure and embrace that opportunity, and let's see what happens.
When you talk about this whole situation changed you, you're in a good place now. How has it changed you? What place are you in right now? Where are you mentally? Where you were last year?
I'm blessed. I'm happy. I'm grateful. Thankful for this opportunity. I talked to the team last night. We had an opportunity. Kevin called up a couple guys, and we gave our history, our story. He called it the 4 H's, which is the history about yourself, your heroes, your heartbreaks, and your hopes. And I had the opportunity to speak to the team and told my story. But I'm just happy about just life in general. And I have a great support cast around me, have a great family, have a great home, and an organization that's backing me up. So with that foundation, I feel like I can, get back to where I was and be even better as a person and as a player.
And Tim, he just sounds like he's comfortable. He sounds like, 1, he wants to be here long term, and 2, he's comfortable.
You can't understate that level of comfortability. It's his second season with the team, his second season with his coaching staff, second season with so many of these different guys, and he, like you said, he just seems comfortable. That whole soundbite, he sounds more relaxed. He sounds more like just a guy who's just ready to go and focused on the season and just kind of ready to move forward. And I think that's the gist I kind of got with Deshaun Watson's entire press conference yesterday, just being more comfortable in his setting. I think when you're more comfortable, you perform better. And talking about that pressure that's on him, he's used to it. In Houston, he was the guy that led the Texans to back-to-back playoff appearances in 2018, 2019, won them a playoff game in 2019. So he knows what it takes to take a team to the playoffs. Now he's in Cleveland in the second season with most of these guys, knowing the system, hopefully for him and the Browns, knocking that rust off and looking like the guy that was in Houston and having the numbers he did. It's just now going out there and proving that he's still that guy. And if he is with that talent out there, he could show exactly what he's capable of. It just, again, comes down to him doing it when the lights are bright.
So earlier we talked about the questions at depth at defensive tackle as well as linebacker. The third big question is about that running back room. Behind Nick Chubb, there isn't a lot of experience. You've got Jerome Ford. Andrew Berry talked about that group and what he expects from them.
Kareem was here for, 3 years, 4 years. Anytime you move on from a vet, it gives some other players a chance to step up. We feel really good about Jerome. He had a very strong spring, particularly in his pass protection ability, the mental side of it. A big reason that we drafted him in 22 was because of his ability as like a receiver, and we think that he'll be able to play that role really well. But behind Nick and Jerome, there's going to be some competition, Tony, and it remains to be seen who can emerge for that third running back spot. But again, that's what training camp is going to be for.
And again, so Tim, I've heard that before. The reason they drafted him is pass catching ability. Everybody is questioning, do they have a guy that can catch passes? It's also important to remember, and I forgot this earlier in the preseason, Jerome Ford was a wide receiver in high school, so he can catch the ball a little bit.
Yeah, you would have to imagine if you got that kind of background, you better be good at catching the football. And I think I am pretty high in Jerome Ford. Obviously, he was very, very good in the preseason a year ago. Obviously, didn't get a lot of opportunities because of who he was playing behind: Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, Dearness Johnson. Now those last two guys are gone, and it's his turn to kind of step up. And Andrew Berry talking about how he had to improve the pass protection, and it seemed like he's gotten better at that. And I think that's an easy way as a running back to get yourself on the field is give yourself that ability to be a pass protector, because with an elite quarterback like Deshaun Watson on third down, you're going to need to give him all the time you can, especially because he can hold on to the football a little bit longer. If you have a running back that could do that and not just always going to be, a pass catching option, it opens options, it opens versatility, it opens, the door for him to be more versatile, for him to fill a different role. And I think, that third running back, whoever's going to be, whether it's Demetric Felton or somebody else, maybe Hassan Hall, the UDFA they signed out of Georgia Tech, to see who it's going to be, I think it's going to be one of the more interesting battles, because we have to imagine Ford is going to get plenty of carries behind Nick Chubb, who's going to need a breather. You probably don't want to give him, a ton of carries as they probably had to a year ago, considering Kareem Hunt was slowing down a little bit. But Ford, I think, has a good chance to step up, and there's a lot to like in there, and I'm fascinated to see what he's going to do this season.
Tim Bielik, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Tim.
You got it. Thanks for having me, guys. Have a good day.
All right, Tim Bielik, make sure you check him out, Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com. We're going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, Tyler Johnson from the Faithful Dawgs podcast and Network 216. We continue talking Browns. We'll be right back.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE. Andrew Berry met with media at training camp in Greenbrier, West Virginia. Talks about Nick Chubb and his future with the Browns.
Nick Chubb is the type of player and person that you hope is with the organization as long as possible, period.
So. Andrew, going back to the wear and tear with Nick, I mean, Do you feel like that is? I mean, because it seemed like even back in Georgia, he wasn't the one, the only guy. He had other guys, and then with Kareem and others, since he's been in the pro. Do you feel like he's a guy that the workload has been managed well, for him over the course of his career?
Yeah, I think Nick has shown himself to be durable for us. I think you all see on social media how well he takes care of his body, obviously, and he's the consummate professional. So we're hopeful that he can play as long as possible.
With that, let's welcome in Tyler Johnson from the Faithful Dog podcast, as well as Network 216. Tyler, he went on to say that those clips are both exciting and create anxiety for him as general manager. But everybody's talking about the running back position. We heard from him earlier. He views Nick Chubb as a difference maker. So let's wait and see. It sure sounds like Andrew Berry would like him to be in a Browns uniform as long as he is productive.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you have a player like Nick Chubb, who not only we think, but a lot of people around the NFL believe Nick Chubb is the best running back in the NFL, I think you try and find a way to make that happen for as long as possible. Now, where it gets dicey is his contract. I mean, he's currently making this year he's a base salary of $10.8 million. In 2024, it is $11.75 million. So it becomes dicey for the Browns there because in 2024, like let's say hypothetically they cut Nick Chubb, they'd be able to save nearly $8 million in cap space. But I think Nick Chubb is in a position too, kind of like the question that was asked. He has not had a lot of wear and tear on his body throughout his NFL career. I mean, last year was the first time he was over 300 rushing attempts in his entire career. You look at 2021, 228, 2020, 190. He's never gone above 300 except last year. So him being going to be 28 years old, the fact that he doesn't have as much wear and tear on his body is a great sign. But I think what's difficult too for not only Nick Chubb but other running backs in the league, the position is just really easy to replace. And you hate to say that because we love Nick Chubb, but if Nick Chubb at the end of his contract still wants to see $10 million or more, it might be difficult for the Browns to make that happen. I do think as long as the Browns are winning and contending, I do think there's a way they can find to keep Nick Chubb on this roster. And Nick Chubb would even be willing to possibly take a little bit less if it meant that Deshaun Watson wanted him here and that the organization wanted to keep him here and that the Browns were consistently in the playoffs. So something to watch. I really hope the Browns can keep Nick Chubb, but as we're seeing with running backs around the league, it's a huge talking point right now for sure.
All right, so Deshaun Watson, we know with him at quarterback, this offense will look different. And he talked in his media availability this week about how different it will look.
I just say that, being able to move everyone around, being able to have, guys play all types of different positions, and being able to, go out there and play fast, but have, like I said, the biggest thing is just moving guys around and being able to do all types of things that, you guys in the media, this fan base haven't seen in the past. So being able to open the whole playbook and open the whole offense is definitely going to be special.
How much is that is Elijah being with this team now and the way you can utilize him all over the formation?
It's great because Elijah can do all types of things. He's very versatile. He can play outside, inside, whatever you need him to do, he can do. But also just the young guys and the depth that we have in that receiver room. Yeah, a lot of guys might not have big names yet, but they can go out there and they can make plays. And being able to, hang around Amari, hang around DPJ, hang around Elijah, the young guys are being able to, channel that opportunity, that grind, that work, and be able to go out here and participate and be locked in and focused. And, that's what we've been able to see, and we want to have depth and, everyone be able to have the opportunity to make plays.
We'll talk about the wide receiving group in just a minute, but he didn't have to say that about the young receivers, so I believe that's genuine. The other thing is they did a real good job of finding different skill sets and skills in their wide receiving group, which is that versatility that he's talking about.
Yeah, and that's what I love about the group that Andrew Berry's brought in. It's not necessarily the biggest names just because of where the Browns were, their situation cap-wise, but you bring in a guy like Elijah Moore, like Watson said, he could play in different positions. Cedric Tillman and David Bell. I feel like Cedric Tillman is going to somewhat play a role this year. It's not going to be a huge role, but Cedric Tillman can be that X wide receiver, that guy, play that DPJ type role. And then you have David Bell. And David Bell coming out of Purdue, a lot of people forget that he was an outside receiver. And the Browns are using him more in the slot, and I understand why they're doing that. But David Bell has the ability to play inside and outside. And I think that's absolutely huge to being able to have a lot of different looks on the offensive side of the ball. When you see some of the highlights that were just little videos we're seeing out of training camp, guys are moving around everywhere. I mean, there's times you're seeing David Bell outside. There's times you're seeing Elijah Moore outside. You're seeing DPJ inside, DPJ outside, Cedric Tillman outside. Having that type of versatility gives the Browns a lot of different weapons that they can use on offense, but also it creates a lot of problems for the opposing defensive coordinator. And that's why it's important to have a bunch of different skill sets on your roster. It's great to have speed everywhere. Like if you can have guys that are just run straight 4-3 all the time, it's great. But at the same time, you still need some of those big body guys. And that's what Andrew Berry's done a great job of creating this offseason is versatile players that have different skill sets, but very complement each other well.
So the big question is, how do you use Nick Chubb in the same offense with Deshaun Watson? Will be, without question, the best running back that he's ever played with. How does he run out of shot? There's all kinds of questions. Deshaun Watson talked about how important Nick Chubb is to this offense.
Chubb, really all those guys, but starting with Chubb, I mean, he's a big part of this offense, and we know that. And so we're going to continue to feature him and do what he's great at. And Chubb, he's going to embrace his role and be able to do everything, catch passes, run the ball, and do things that he probably haven't done before. But, you know, when you get in that meeting room and you ask him if he's comfortable with it, he's open for whatever's going to help the team, you know, get to that ultimate goal. That's what he's going to do. So, you know, being able to feature him, he's a very important part for this, not just the offense, but this team.
And now when you had a chance to kind of watch those games last year from afar, did you learn anything new about him or see anything about him that kind of surprised you?
I've always known Chubb was going to be Chubb. I've been watching him since high school. You know, we both from Georgia, so watching high school football, Cedartown, and Gainesville. I don't think we were in the same division, but our bracket, however you call it, classification. But I already knew about Chubb, so it's nothing new for me. It wasn't surprising for me. It's just not having an opportunity to play with him is definitely fun.
So the way this works, Tyler, if you spread it out, you run Nick Chubb. If you load the box, you let Deshaun Watson throw it. That's literally what they're looking at.
Yeah, and that's what's nice about having a running back like Nick Chubb. A lot of people are wondering, how good is he running out of the shotgun? Well, I mean, he was elite at it when he did it last year. And the Browns didn't do that a lot last year, really, up until Watson returned. But even when they did, Nick Chubb was one of the best in the league running out of the shotgun. And you mentioned it. They're going to stack the box. Deshaun Watson's going to throw the football, and he's going to be successful doing it. If they want to spread things out, that's when you run Nick Chubb, because good luck having enough people to cover every weapon that the Browns have on offense. And another thing to keep in mind with that is the read option that I know we're going to see in the offseason. This season, we're going to see a ton of that. We're going to see Deshaun Watson with read option Nick Chubb. We're going to see maybe Elijah Moore in the backfield, which the Browns have teased a little bit, just based off some of the highlights we've seen so far in training camp. But also, then the RPO coming off of that. We saw it a little bit when Deshaun Watson returned against the Texans. We really didn't see it much outside of that, just because that's a lot to learn on the fly, not only for the receivers, but mainly the offensive line, and knowing when to hold their blocks and when not to. So you're going to see a lot more RPOs as well this year. And I don't know, Dave, how you cover that truly. I mean, you have Watson who can use his legs, and then you have the best running back in the league in Nick Chubb. So defensive coordinator is going to have some tough decisions to make this year.
So Marquise Goodwin, unable to really go, we found late last week, had blood clots in his legs and lungs. Browns are hopeful he can return. They think they caught it early, but you're just not sure. These are three free agent options if Goodwin misses significant time from Dog Pound Daily. Number 3, Julio Jones. Number 2, T.Y. Hilton. And number 1, Sammy Watkins. And I don't know about you, Tyler. I would pass on all of them and wait until cutdown day, because I think you'd be able to get a better wide receiver who would help you more when those 900 free agents are available. Again, there's no need to go out and bring somebody in now.
Yeah, there isn't a need to do that at all. A guy that I'm kind of a little bit intrigued with that the Browns were supposedly supposed to have a workout with was Ja'Cory Pearson. He played in the XFL this past year. He's known as really a speed guy. So if you're looking for someone that, and again, it depends. We don't know Marquise Goodwin's situation. We really hope and pray the best for him as he's dealing with something that's really scary situation. But Pearson had 670 yards this past year, 4 touchdowns. He did really well accelerating after the catch, and he's a speed guy. So if you're looking for that type of receiver, like you said, Dave, there's going to be plenty of guys when cut downs are done. They'll be able to find a guy like that if they need to. Another guy that comes to mind that hasn't announced his retirement but's leaning towards that is Deshaun Jackson. If you're looking for just that straight-up vertical type of threat, he can still take the top off the defense when necessary. But the guys that were mentioned there, yeah, they don't fill the same type of role that Marquise Goodwin does. And that's going to be the tough part. If Goodwin does miss significant time, are you going to be able to find a guy that can play that type of role? Because Elijah Moore, he's a speed guy, but I wouldn't say he is just your consistent vertical threat that Marquise Goodwin is. David Bell's not that guy. Cedric Tillman isn't that guy. We were hoping Anthony Schwartz could be that guy, but now he's coming off an injury, a hamstring, so we don't know. He was on the roster bubble anyway, but you thought maybe he'd have a little bit of an opportunity if Marquise Goodwin out. So yeah, there's no need to add anybody right now. Signing Austin Watkins is a solid addition just to see what you have as far as in training camp and even the preseason. But other than that, Andrew Berry's not going to panic, and there's no reason to at this point.
Tyler Johnson and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. We'll hear more from Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski. Sports4CLE, we'll be right back. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Tyler Johnson from the Faithful Dawgs podcast, as well as Network 216. Browns beefed up the defensive tackle spot. Still not the depth that they would like. Kevin Stefanski talked about what Dalvin Tomlinson brings to the team.
He's a pro, really fits in well with our guys, very, very conscientious person, very intelligent, likes to work. So you watch him in his individual drills and out here in practice, he doesn't shy away from the work at all. So I just think he fits right into who we are.
How important do you think that veteran presence is at that spot for you?
Yeah, I think veteran presence is important really at every spot if you can get it. Defensively, up front, have some younger guys, have some older guys certainly in that group, but having a guy that's been through some battles, so to speak, I think is great.
And Tyler, that was because the defensive tackle spot last year was so young, and it just didn't get it done the way it needed to be done.
Yeah, and that's why, I have to wonder if the Browns are going to explore adding another defensive tackle. When you had Perrion Winfrey, I still thought we needed to add another a veteran D tackle. But now that Perrion Winfrey is no longer on the roster, you're down to Maurice Hurst and Tristan Hill, and you do need to see what you have in those players and see maybe if you can find a diamond in the rough there for cheap, which they've explored doing clearly. But outside of that, you have Dalvin Tomlinson, Jordan Elliott. So far in his time in Cleveland, we really haven't seen much from him. Tommy Togiat's another guy that continuously we haven't seen much from. There are still veteran D tackles that are available. You have Shelby Harris. He's 31 years old. Michael Brockers. Akeem Hicks is a name that's interesting because the Browns had some interest in him last year. He's always battled some injuries, but when he was with the Bears, he was one of the best defensive tackles in the NFL. So if you can get him maybe on a one-year deal, you could look at that. Ndamukong Suh. There are guys available that the Browns could look at. They also could wait until cutdown day, much like if they had to add a wide receiver or another position. there's talent there that they can add. I just feel more comfortable if you have another veteran presence there. I know Zadarius Smith is going to play more inside. I know Myles Garrett from time to time will. Alex Wright, I think, is going to play more snaps inside this year than outside. So, again, you're going to have versatility with some of the players you have. But at the same time, outside Dalvin Tomlinson, if he goes down, we're in the same position we were last year. And you could make the case now without Perrion Winfrey, we're in a much worse spot last year. Because even though Perrion Winfrey didn't play great, he still ended up playing a decent amount of snaps towards the end of the year. So if you hope Dalvin Tomlinson doesn't get injured, but if he does and you don't add another veteran defensive tackle, you're right back where you were last year.
Yeah, and the one thing, the reason to wait is you've got to find some young guys that you can develop. And in theory, more of the younger guys will be available on cutdown day. So you might even see where you sign a veteran and then you wait and see if a younger guy becomes available as well, so you can kind of develop that next guy so you don't have to keep going back to free agency. Andrew Berry also talked about the Zadarius Smith trade and how important it was.
We can never have enough rushers. I think with Z, the appeal with him is his versatility. He's a high-level rusher who, I think oftentimes people just think of him as an edge guy, but I think really where he's particularly skilled is his ability to rush inside over a guard or center. And he can do the stuff on the edge really well, but having someone who can win quickly inside just gives you so much versatility to create advantageous matchups to rush the passer. So between him, Obo with his speed off the edge, we have a couple power guys, with Dalvin and Siaki. It's a nice blend of skill sets to get after the quarterback.
And Tyler, more than anything, that's Jim Schwartz's defense. If you win quickly, you create havoc at the line of scrimmage, you push the line of scrimmage back, your defense is going to be successful most of the time.
Yeah, and the fact that you have Zadarius Smith that you can put inside, like Andrew Berry mentioned, you also have the fact that you have a secondary that might end up being one of the most talented in the NFL. Martin Emerson Jr., Denzel Ward, Greg Newsome II. You have the ability, Jim Schwartz does, to mix and match those guys. And if these guys can stay in coverage long enough and these guys can get off to the quarterback quick enough, oh, man, it's going to be a field day for Myles Garrett and Zadarius Smith, because Jim Schwartz isn't going to have to probably even blitz a ton. And that's the other thing. I know some fans, one of the things we want to see a lot of is blitzing. Jim Schwartz might not even need to do that. And you don't necessarily want to blitz a lot, because that means you're not getting home with your front four. I think you're in a situation now where you're going to be able to get home with your front four very often this year. I mean, the Browns should, and again, this is should, be one of the leading teams in sacks this year. They have that much talent on the defensive line. There's no reason why Myles Garrett and Zadarius Smith shouldn't combine for close to 30 sacks this year, or even more than that. That much talent is there, and if you can get to the quarterback with four guys, it also shows not only do you have elite pass rushing, but it shows that your secondary is doing very well in coverage, bringing in Juan Thornhill. And then you have Grant Delpit. If Grant Delpit takes that next step, which I think is going to be huge for this defense, getting to that elite level is Grant Delpit's performance. If that happens, on top of having Myles Garrett and Zadarius Smith healthy this year, this Browns defense could be one of the best in the league. Because from a talent standpoint, there aren't many that have as much talent on defense as the Browns do.
Tyler Johnson and I are going to take one more time out. We'll be back. We'll hear more from Jimmy Haslam. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Tyler Johnson from the Faithful Dawgs Podcast Network 216. Earlier this afternoon, Jimmy Haslam met with the media, talked about what he has seen from General Manager Andrew Berry.
I have to remind myself that he's younger than all our children, Jerry. because, you know, he's one of those, we all know people, you wonder, were they ever a kid? And Andrew is mature beyond his years. He's very bright. He's extremely conscientious. He's all about growing and how do I get better. And he is relentless too. I mean, I see it when he goes after something, whether it's negotiating a contract or trying to get a player, and not just Deshaun level, lower level players. And I think he's going to be a really, really good GM. Here again, he's entering his 4th year. What is AB 36? He's 36 years old, and I think he's going to be really good.
And Tyler sure doesn't seem like the general manager is in any danger of not being the general manager of the Browns. Now, anything can change, but it sure sounds like the owner really likes the general manager that he has.
Yeah, and he should. I mean, Andrew Berry has done a fantastic job if we think about where the Browns were before he took over from John Dorsey. I mean, a bad cap situation. The Browns were really not meeting expectations. And so far under Andrew Berry, they have made the playoffs once. And not only Kevin Stefanski, but Andrew Berry's dealt with tough circumstances as well these last couple of years and has still put together a very competitive roster talent-wise. And Andrew Berry, being as young as he is, ideally what you want is a situation your general manager can be here for 15, 20 years. I mean, that's what you want. Andrew Berry being only 36, he can be here for a while. And you look at the talent that he continuously puts around the roster. This is the most talented roster the Browns have had. But also since he took over, the talent has never been higher since Andrew Berry took over and adding the pieces that he has. But it just goes to show with Jimmy Haslam, I do think he is being more patient than he was in years past because he sees that this group, Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry, have already made the playoffs together. They've dealt with some tough circumstances the second year they were together and last year. So a lot of people believe Kevin Stefanski's on the hot seat, and I can see that, but also I think he really does have confidence in this group, and he also has more patience in this group than he has with other head coaches and GMs that he's had because, one, he's tasted playoff success, but he just sees how much the players respect Andrew Berry and the respect Andrew Berry has from around the league because there are a lot of NFL teams that I bet would love to have Andrew Berry as their general manager, especially not only given the deals he's pulled off, but his age too. Being a 36-year-old general manager and it's his 4th year with the Browns as a general manager, that's pretty incredible.
This one from Dog Pound Daily. 3 ways the Browns get back to the playoffs in 2023. Number 1, defense has to stop the run. Number 2, pass rush must live up to its potential. And 3, Deshaun Watson has to be Deshaun Watson again. Tyler, when you look at it, Deshaun Watson has to give you competent quarterback play, and the defense does have to be as good as it was. The run defense was horrible, but I think Jim Schwartz and his in-game adjustments will be a substantial upgrade. Let's put it that way.
I would agree with that. And I think the big thing with Joe Woods when he was here, it didn't seem like, at least if you were watching the game, the Browns weren't making any defensive adjustments. And that really frustrated not only myself, but other fans too, because we can clearly see on TV what the issue is, but it seemed like nothing was ever being done about it. So that was frustrating. I know Jim Schwartz will address that. But yeah, the defense has to stop the run. That's why you bring in Dalvin Tomlinson. And that's why bringing another veteran defensive tackle will be very beneficial. I will say having Dalvin Tomlinson on that defensive line, whoever's starting next to him, whether that's Siaki Ika, Maurice Hurst, Jordan Elliott, whoever's starting next to him, that's still going to help because Dalvin Tomlinson, will eat up at least 1 block, maybe 2. The biggest thing this year is you got to keep these offensive linemen from going to that second level consistently. The biggest problem the Browns had was stopping the run, and a big reason why is because their defensive tackles couldn't eat up any blocks. And so JOK didn't perform very well. None of the linebackers last year did. Anthony Walker Jr. had injury. Taki ended up getting injured, so did Jacob Phillips. But none of the linebackers were able to perform well because your defensive tackles couldn't eat up blocks. And when it comes to Deshaun Watson, we want him to be Deshaun Watson again. We want him to be that top 10 NFL quarterback. But at the same time, if he is just solid and performs at a little bit higher than average, this Browns team will probably be a playoff team. That's just how much talent there is around him. And even when he didn't perform well last year, he still had more touchdowns than interceptions. So, I mean, give Deshaun Watson a full year, and I think we will see him back to his former self.
The one thing I would say is he was 3-3 last year without a whole lot of time, without a system that was designed for him. So let's wait and see. If he is Deshaun Watson, one of the top 5-6 quarterbacks in the league, this is a Super Bowl contender. Tyler, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Tyler.
Anytime, Dave. Thank you.
Tyler Johnson, make sure you check him out, Faithful Dawgs Podcast, as well as Network 216. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.